welcome to the Storage Syndicate Spotlight. It is Wednesday night, 7 o'clock. I am Thaddeus Campbell, joined as always by Steve Murphy, still working overtime at the office tonight, Murph, and I am absolutely ecstatic. I love doing these every week. This week I've been particularly excited for, joined by Austin McLeod, somebody who I'll share the story of my meeting Austin and how we sort of developed our relationship, even though it makes me look like a major asshole. I'm going to share the story anyway, but somebody I have tremendous respect for and am really excited to pick his brain because he has some specific insight into the self-storage market that I think is really important for those of us in the development side, the investment side. So Austin, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time and come and hang out with us for 45 minutes.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, Austin, I appreciate
it. Steve, I want to give a little background of who Austin is and why it is that we want to have him here. Austin is one of the most successful brokers in the self-storage space, literally traded billions of dollars from self-storage. I'm a little annoyed because I turned 50 in less than 30 days. He's like 20 years old, at least that's how he looks. Already a vice president of the brokerage he works for, Matthews Real Estate, just really has achieved amazing things at a very young age. And so just want to give that little bit of criteria and introduce him, and someone I could not have more respect for. Couldn't be more proud to have someone that actually answers the phone when I give him a call. So a little bit of background on Austin, and hope you guys get a bunch of amazing information out of the next 45 minutes.
Yeah, and I just want to say this is my first time actually connecting with you, Austin, and I appreciate you coming on. Thad speaks very highly of you, talks about you all the time, and I think he's been promoting this interview for almost a month now, so this is pretty anticipated.
Yeah. I can share that I don't always cut the promo videos 3 weeks in advance. Sometimes they get cut the day before. So, yeah, I've definitely had this one on the calendar and excited. So I'm just going to share the story of how I connected with Austin. I get emails. I got 5 of them today. I get emails in my inbox for properties that are for sale from different brokerages all the time. And I got one from Austin. Happened to open this one. I think it was in Tennessee. I can't remember if it was in Memphis or
Knoxville.
Knoxville. It was in Knoxville. So Knoxville, Tennessee, and it was a facility that was not full. It wasn't performing at a high rate. It was not super. It met none of the criteria that I want to see. And I think it was being marketed at a pro forma, like on expectation at a 4.5 cap. So I'm like looking at this thing. I'm like, there is no way for me to make money off of this deal by what we do, which is buy it, increase the value and turn around and sell it or refi it. There was no possibility. So I think I sent an email back to Austin saying, hey, and I might not have said the word asshole in the email, but I don't think I was very kind. I say, hey, can you not send me stuff that you're sending? You're trying to sell at a 4.5 cap on expected value. There's no way on God's green earth anyone's buying this thing on that price. And I think it was like 45 minutes before I got the email back that said, hey, don't worry, I already have a full ask offer on the property. So I'm sitting there eating crow. And thankfully from that, I put my ego to the side and we kept having a conversation. I think we were in Florida at the Florida SSA event.
Yeah, we met a couple weeks
after
later.
that.
Yeah,
and just nothing but gracious. Didn't hold it over my head that I did something that was, obviously I looked like the bad guy in that situation, but had a lot of respect for the way that you handled that. And one of the reasons that I'm so excited to have you on, but so excited, I know we'll do business over the next 10, 20, 30 years. So thank you for that. Appreciate your grace and how you handled it.
Yeah. Also, I was like to kind of get a little background on the beginnings on the guys that come on the show. I mean, I did, my research on you. I saw you went to Florida State. I saw you went, finance and real estate. But what really was the first thing that moved you towards real estate?
Honestly, it was just getting connected with our president now at Matthews, who also went to Florida State, and then one of our market leaders here. They both went to Florida State. Matthews was a, West Coast company. And honestly, throughout college, I was planning on doing financial advising and, getting into financial management. It wasn't really something that I had, targeted. It was more so an opportunity that I saw in school to pick up another major, pick up another degree. While in school, my main kind of plan was in finance, and ended up taking on this second major though, and then got connected with Matthews, and that was kind of my first introduction into commercial real estate brokerage. Now, obviously, I knew what a realtor was, but wasn't that keen and in the know on the commercial side. But I ended up learning about the business and learning more about Matthews. And that was kind of my first, I'd say, intro into it. I was probably 19 at the time.
Mm.
So this is something we always dive into. You see a little Storage Syndicate logo up in the corner of the screen, and we have a mastermind that we run for people getting into real estate. And we always kind of, it's such a theme that connects, is the importance of having mentors and connecting to people and having them guide you in. Sounds like that connection from Florida State is eventually what got you into being a broker.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dave Harrington, who's our president now, he went to Florida State probably 20, 30 years ago. And then Johnny Craig, who's a market leader here, they were just back and at a career fair. And I just happened to meet them with, a couple of other agents that work here now. One of them, met the two of them first, and then told me that I should make an introduction. And so just got connected to him from there. Ended up, following up with them and doing a couple interviews, and then doing an internship. And yeah, since then they've been phenomenal mentors. That is one thing about Matthews. I feel like that, just provide a lot of support and great mentorship.
So I'm interested to know, because you are a young guy, you're still, you're so far ahead of the curve for where most people are at your age. What do you attribute the success? I mean, look, there's $1 billion in front of the number that you've been involved in self-storage transactions. That's a significant number. What do you attribute that to? What do you think are the keys, some of the things that have helped you get to that place in such a quick time?
Yeah, I would say number one, it's work ethic. I mean, simple as that. It was when I first started, I was here every day, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m., staying until 8:30, working pretty much every Saturday, most Sundays. So, I mean, and that was a 3.5, 4 year, schedule there. And then last couple of years, I mean, I'm still working 14 hours a day, Monday through Thursday. I still work most Saturdays, but I would say I attribute 90% of it to just work ethic and hard work, and just, keeping a positive attitude, because this business is very challenging. I mean, the first year and a half, you're not really making any money. And so just keeping a positive attitude and continuing to work hard. And then I'd say another thing too, I came in and I wanted to learn. I'm a coachable guy. And I think that's very important, is just being a sponge and learning as much as you can about self-storage as an industry, but then also about brokerage, and kind of, honing in on your craft and becoming an expert in that space. So, I mean, I'm still learning today, of course, but that has been something that has helped me, tremendously, is just kind of learning as much as I possibly can, and kind of just diving in, to the industry, to the business. And just combining that work with my work ethic. I think those two factors have really propelled me to where I am now.
There's a couple of things in there that I want to expound upon, because I think I wouldn't say missing, because there are people out there that have them, but not the norm necessarily, which number one is you weren't looking for the immediate gratification, right? You were able to understand that it might be a couple years before you're going to see the fruits of that labor. And the other thing is just being willing to work harder than other people are willing to work, without necessarily that instant gratification, right? Some people are willing to work really, really hard, really, really long if they're getting paid. But when you're coming into what we do, there's no guarantee, right? Nobody's giving you a paycheck in what we do. You got to go out and you got to earn it. How did you survive those first couple years when it can be lean? Where did your belief come from that there was going to be an end to the tunnel that was worth it?
Yeah. Well, Matthews does a very good job of setting expectations for new agents coming in. So there was an understanding that I had before I started that, hey, it's going to be a year or two before I see the results. and before I see success, before I make any money. And the belief really came from just seeing other agents at the firm and the success that they had had. Because I'll tell you guys, I'm not the only agent that's under 30 years old that's doing a lot of business like this. I mean, there's several other guys at Matthews that are, and there were several others, ahead of me prior to me starting. So I saw them and I saw what they were able to accomplish very early on. And that was what I was chasing for. That was kind of in the back of my head was, hey, they went through the same thing. You just got to stick it out. And thankfully I did. So, but having that expectation coming in and knowing that up front was imperative.
I love that. It goes back to what we're talking about, right? Of having the role model, having the mentor, knowing, but you had it. You at least knew that the opportunity was there and the possibility was there.
Oh, yeah.
Where do you attribute your belief? Because some people see that and their immediate, we talk about this all the time in our mastermind, the fears that control us sometimes, right? And some people see that and they're like, man, there's no way I'm going to do what they do. How did Austin McLeod see those other people succeeding at that level and believe that you were going to make it there?
Yeah. Well, I'd say I've always been a confident guy and always had a lot of confidence in myself. And I knew that I was willing to work. I mean, I've always had a great work ethic. And that was kind of part of the message communicated. It's not that brokerage is that complex of a business. It's just very challenging and, and can be taxing. And so I knew that if I could just stick it out and just stay positive and just work, that I could get through it. So, I was pretty confident in my abilities to find success and just have skills to, accomplish closing deals and building my business. But I also just knew that I could outwork people. So I leaned on that.
Yeah, I want to tie in a little something on that too, because honestly, for myself, I'm recently moving into the acquisition side of things, and what's challenging, the work ethic's one thing, but how do you handle, as you first get into it, the knowledge aspect, right? How do you handle the mindset of, I don't know enough. I want to know everything as quick as possible, but it takes time, getting yourself through that phase. 'Cause that's kind of where I'm at. In the day, I'm like, man, I want to be, listen to Thad talk. Thad talks numbers. Thad's talking self-storage. You can do that in his sleep. And that's where I want to be. I want to be there today. Right. But, it's challenging and it takes some time. So how do you handle that development process?
Yeah. I mean, patience, right? And it's so hard, but I would say the way that I looked at it was, how can I accelerate this as fast as possible? So it was just spending as much time as I could learning about the ins and outs of the business. I mean, and one thing that I learned a ton from was just getting on the phones and talking to owners, because you can read articles all day, but talking to someone like that, talking to guys that have been in the business, which in my position was, I got to do that for, that's part of our job, right? Is outreach to owners. And so I learned a ton just in the first 6 months on the phones, just talking to guys that have been in the business forever. So, I mean, that did kind of help me because I noticed my, level of knowledge accelerated pretty dramatically once I actually got on the phones and started talking to owners.
Nice. Yeah, that helps. Yeah.
So I want to go back to before we went live. We were talking a little bit. You asked me how long this was going to last, and it's a 45-minute show that we do every week. And you said, great. I blocked it for an hour on my calendar. And I thought that was it. First of all, it didn't surprise me in the least little bit. Knowing you, seeing the way you operate, quite frankly, the condition you're in, the way you present yourself, and the success level that you've had, that you book your time. Your time is on a calendar. You know what you're doing. So you talk to me about 14-hour days. What does a 14-hour day look like for Austin McLeod? Take me through kind of step by step what a day looks like, what you're getting done.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to Dave Harrington, he's big on this, blocking your time, right? So, I create a schedule for my day and what my day should look like. And sure, every day is a little different, but in general, they're all somewhat structured similarly. So to start, first thing I do when I get in the office is clean out my inbox. I'm very specific about my email and just making sure that, what needs to be responded to has been responded to, and what can be cleaned out of the inbox is cleaned out just to stay organized. And then from there, it's generally underwriting deals. So I've got 6 agents that work under me here. And, I, of course, have my own business as well. So much of the day, kind of before 10 a.m., is spent underwriting deals that we're looking at and getting ready for proposals that we're presenting to owners either later that day or later on in the week. And then around, 10 a.m., I'd say, that's when we're on the phones. I mean, part of our business is staying in touch with owners, calling around on listings that we have active, and getting buyers on the phone and actually pitching them on, why they should purchase that facility or add that portfolio, to their schedule of real estate. So, generally from 10 to 12, it's, on the phones, reaching out to owners, course, stop to eat lunch, and then afternoon typically is presenting proposals to prospective clients, and then generally that'll go until about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then from 6 until I leave around 8, it's sending follow-up emails, again cleaning out the inbox, responding to emails as needed, and then preparing for proposals later on. So again, each day is kind of scheduled like that. Generally, I'll consider 10 a.m. to 5:30, 6 p.m. as call time, where that's outreach to owners, that's presenting pricing analysis, that's business generation, and then the hours outside of call time, I call it admin work. Getting broker opinion and values ready to go, and just getting everything in order for the next day.
That's so insightful to just see the kind of level of or amount of work, right? We hear that $1 billion number, and you don't understand sometimes that didn't happen on accident. There's a process, and there's an amount of work that went into making that happen that is quite frankly for many people overwhelming. A lot of people don't want to be in an office at 6 a.m. and leave at 8 p.m, right? That no matter what the compensation might look like. So appreciate you sharing that. It's one of the reasons I was excited to get you on. Look, there's that whole thing about the people, you become the people you're around, right? And so it's kind of neat for me just to get on and talk to you, because I consider myself somebody that works a lot and works hard, but hearing someone literally that puts 14-hour days back to back to back, it's hard not to be motivated to push yourself that much more. So I appreciate that. When do you see the industry going? I'm going to, Shaylin, I apologize for pronouncing your name wrong. I literally am going right to that question. Somebody else asked earlier if we're going to be in Vegas. So Steve and I will be at the Storage Syndicate booth on the floor. Austin, I'm sure you're going to be there, correct?
Oh, yeah. I'll be there. We've got a booth, Matthews Real Estate Investment Services. I'll be around the show on different meetings and whatnot. So we'll be there.
Love it. Yeah, definitely look for Austin. And if you haven't made a connection with him, a guy worthy of asking. Going to what really is your area of expertise. The numbers came out from the SSA earlier this year. I think in 2022, the average trade of a Class A facility happened at a 4.6 cap. Real quickly, for those of you who don't understand cap rates, 4.6 cap, divide 4.6 by 100. That's the number of years it's going to take to recoup your investment, right? So you're looking at a 4.6 cap, more than 20 years of the net operating income paid for upfront to buy the property. That's a pretty astounding number, right? When it comes to commercial property, I think that's actually the average of commercial transactions in downtown Philadelphia is a 4.6 cap. That's self-storage for Class A across the board, which is pretty neat. That being said, there was a seismic shift in what was going on in the debt markets with interest rates last year. Interested to pick your brain. 2023, you're obviously marketing things regularly. What are we looking at for an adjustment as far as cap rates on offers?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen on Class A, not as big of an adjustment, I'd say, as call it Class B, Class C, but there certainly has been adjustment. I mean, from the peak, I'd say there's been about 100 basis point increase in cap rates. And even on Class B, Class C, I'd say 125, 150 basis point increase on cap rates. So, I mean, it's made a significant impact on overall pricing, but relative to interest rates increasing by 300 to 350 basis points, it's somewhat minimal. So we are still seeing pretty strong pricing right now for Class A facilities, and even Class B. So still more aggressive than 2018, 2019, in my opinion, in some cases.
You think when we get to the end of 2023, we still might see that number in the high 4s, low 5s, something in that area?
I do. I don't see it changing too much by the end of 23, assuming that the Fed doesn't increase another 25 bips until November. But we'll see on that front. Now, if they stay as elevated as they are, I think they'll continue to rise. So 2024, Q1, Q2, I do think that they continue to rise and go up, above 5, 5.25, 5.5. I mean, it does depend on the deal, though, Thad. And that number, I will say real quick, is somewhat skewed. So yes, the in-place cap rate is considered 4.6, but the reason why these institutions and private equity groups are willing to pay a 4.6 is because they think they can get it to a 6 cap in year 2 and a 6.5 in year 3. So, it doesn't tell the true story in self-storage based on in-place cap rate, because there's a lot of other nuances involved. Go ahead.
They're banking on the revenue growth, changing that cap significantly over time. I understand. And guys, understand this. $1 million of net operating income at a 5 cap is a $20 million purchase, right? That's just simple numbers. What the large equity is understanding is that there's been an average of 7 to 8% revenue growth in self-storage for 40 years. So it may be $1 million NOI now, but 10 years from now, that NOI is going to be $1.7 million, $1.8 million, and all of a sudden that 5 cap looks like an 8 or a 9 cap. So, they're betting on that long-term revenue growth. And again, a 40-year track record. So it's not like a short-term history of that kind of growth, revenue growth. It's another interesting question I want to ask you and kind of get your insight on. We got the number from NA REIT. I was up in Manhattan in January at the conference for the New York SSA, and they shared from March 15th, when COVID happened in 2020, to the end of October 2022, I think the REITs grew by 61%, right? So the public storage, extra space, their value went up by 61%. It was it is really unbelievable, right? 2.5 years to see that kind of increase. What we've seen since then is a pretty decent correction in rates, right? The rates have started to pull back a little bit. I'm interested to see how much you've seen that across the board in the underwriting you're doing, and what your thoughts are on what's causing that correction and maybe how long we think it's going to last.
Yeah. So my thoughts on what's causing it is there's just less leasing activity. There's less move-ins. I mean, extra space, they communicated that in their earnings call. Public, same thing. There's just less activity. I think a big driver of that is just the decline in the housing market. Not as many people are moving. Not as many people are shifting to work from home, making lifestyle changes. There just isn't as much volatility right now as there was in 2021. So that's definitely playing a big role there. And at the end of the day, it's a supply and demand business. So there's less demand for new units. The asking rents for those units has come down. Now, what the REITs have done a great job of, though, is managing in-place rents. I mean, their same-store revenue growth has continued to rise quarter over quarter when you look at it. I mean, they're continuing to increase same-store revenue as well as same-store NOI, and that's through in-place rate management. So existing tenants that they've been able to implement rate increases and keep those units leased. Sorry, my office light's turning off here. Let me turn it back on. There we go.
So what happens? You stay at work.
It's motion activated. But so they have done a great job of that. So I mean, their revenue is still going up, but yes, asking rents have certainly declined. How long? I think we'll continue to see this. I mean, it's not like we're headed into the busy season right now. So I do think we'll see more of this. Now, I don't think there's going to be a huge drop off personally. And we have definitely stopped being as aggressive in our underwriting as have most buyers. I mean, previously, in some cases, we could budget and justify 10, 15, 20% rent increases in year one and in year two, and buyers would agree with us. Now, we've got to kind of be more conservative to be in line with the market. So I do think we'll continue to see a drop in asking rates, not that big, but a gradual decline over the next 6 months or so. And then I'd expect it to pick back up again in the busy season next spring.
So I'm going to pick your brain a little bit for some insight into something that Steve and I deal with all the time, right? We're looking in markets across the country that we knew a year ago. I'll pick Cape Coral, Florida off the top of my head because we had a site there under contract before Hurricane Ian went in last September. We ended up pulling out of the deal because we just didn't have enough time left in due diligence to make sure the city was going to be on board with any development. But the rates at the time were like $34 a square foot, right?
Yeah.
And just to give our viewers a little bit of an idea, at $20 a square foot, we tend to believe we're going to be able to build a single-story facility and refi out 100% of our debt in 5 years. At $34 a square foot, we're looking at a massive, massive victory on a project like that. We were going to pay, I think we were at like $14 a square foot for the land, which is more than double what we want to pay. It was more than quadruple what we had ever paid on a site we had owned at the time. Where I'm going with this, I go back and I look at Cape Coral, Florida now, and I do a web rate scrape. I just do it manually. I go on Google and I search the sites, and it's closer to $20 a square foot instead of $34.
Yep.
So I guess my question for you is, for somebody who understands, and you talked about it, the in-place rates in the store are not necessarily reflective of what I'm seeing on a web rate. How do you play that game? Right, for us as developers, and I'm picking your brain a little bit personally for my own benefit here. How do you make that decision? Like, hey, man, this is saying it's $20 a square foot or $15 a square foot, but I know this market is not going to be a $15 or $20 a square foot market 5 years down the road.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough, honestly, and I would say that when you're making big investment decisions like that, it probably is better to err on the side of caution and kind of go on what is, publicly out there, unless you do have some inside information from, a local operator there or from one of the REITs, and sometimes if you do partner with them, which I know you guys do, sometimes they will share information on their stores close by and what they're seeing on in place and maybe what's not available, to the public marketplace. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to say without some inside information in that specific area, that you can completely bank on rents going back up there. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I definitely think, Cape Coral long term is a $24, $25 market, if not better. But I'd say that I definitely want some confirmation on actual in place rates before I went and did a new development in a market where I've seen rents slipping like that.
I think it's interesting, and I'll share for our viewers. We have a very strong relationship with CubeSmart, developing a relationship. We actually just opened a store a week ago up in Allegheny, New York, a distant suburb of Buffalo that we had Life Storage on board to manage. Life Storage obviously merging with Extra Space. We were just out in Utah last week, getting to know Extra Space very well. So we have a good relationship with multiple of the REITs. When we reach out for a market analysis from CubeSmart, it's sometimes interesting to see, because we'll obviously go and we'll see their local stores and we'll see them advertising like $200 for a 10 by 10, just to use a round number. That would be a $24 a square foot market. And then we'll get their market analysis and they'll project that we're going to get like $15 a square foot for a prospective build. And we're like, wait a second, you've got a store right down the street and you're advertising a 10 by 10 for $200 a month. How are you telling us? So it made me think of that with what you said about reaching out to the REITs and try and get some insight. They are not always as forthright as you might hope they would be to help you. But hey, listen, it is what it is. We understand that they have a business to protect as well. So And
Sure.
God bless Guy Middlebrooks, who was one of my very first guests on this show. So I'm not trying to throw Guy under the bus in any way, shape, or form, but it is sometimes funny where you're like, where are you pulling this data from? Are you using the same radius report we used? Because we can get the radius report. What I really want to know is what you're doing in your business. But anyway, I digress significantly. I want to ask a stupid question real quick. Do you have your Taylor on speed dial?
My Taylor? No, I don't. No. Dry cleaner.
I'm
yes.
the guy that's wearing.
I'm in there every week, but
shorts and a black T-shirt every day. That's my standard operating. And Austin is never. I've never seen him not at least in a sport coat, if not the tie. He's not showing the full regalia, but I can promise you that the belt is on point. I gotta explain this a little bit. I happen to be married to a hairstylist. She is like a top of the food chain hairstylist and an Italian. Her parents were off the boat Italians, super, super into fashion. Or I would not have even 20 years ago, I wouldn't have even noticed that. But I'm going to go down that road and ask you, how important is the presentation of Austin McLeod in the grand scheme of what it is you're accomplishing?
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, I think first impression, number one, is huge. And also, you know, look, you guys said I'm a younger guy. I'm 26 years old, right? So when
you had to say, I wasn't going to ask you because I didn't want to know that number. I wanted to be like, he's got to be at least 32.
So no, but when prospective clients see you, they immediately think, okay, younger guy, right? You want there to be a level of professionalism that you present from the start. And I think that starts with the way that you present yourself, the way that you dress, and, the way that you carry yourself ultimately. And so that is something that Matthews as a company teaches, and, something that I take very seriously as well. So yeah, always either in a suit, jacket, or wearing a tie, always.
I'm just going to tell you from there's a couple guys in the Anthony Bassatelli's not watching, but we'll see him out in Vegas next week. He's from Arkland in DC, another Italian guy, not surprisingly, but you and him and you just stand out as somebody, and it obviously worked because I noticed it from the day we met in person in Florida. I noticed the way you carry yourself, and it says something about you. And so, again, goes back, not a surprise that you had someone teaching you that. We don't know what we don't know, but really kind of goes to the importance of putting yourself around the right people, right?
Yeah.
Someone that's giving you those little things that are not really little in the grand scheme of things. Going to go in a different direction. We're going out to SSA next week. We actually just brought in a couple of new people. We hired 2 new people today in our team, which is very exciting for us. We're growing. We're bringing one of them out to Vegas next week. And it was so cool for me because I can remember my first trip was to Orlando for the SSA in March of 2022. I started in storage in August of 2021. So just past my 2-year mark in this industry. Why I'm so excited for Jimmy is because he's going to go to this trade show and he's going to get to meet the people that are in self-storage. So I'm going to let you and ask you, define the camaraderie and the kind of cooperation that exists in this space.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of camaraderie. I mean, it's a very small industry, and and there's a lot of, like I said, collaboration and just people willing to share information, and there is a lot of product to go around. There's a lot of deals to go around, and I think that has been one of the cool kind of aspects of going into self-storage is kind of everyone knows each other, and everyone's kind of willing to collaborate, share information as needed, and help out as needed. So it is a unique asset class within commercial real estate. I think it's probably one of the smallest, but with the highest transaction velocities. I mean, you look at multifamily at NMHC, I mean, there's 30,000 people out there. At SSA in Vegas, we'll probably have 3,500, 4,000 maybe on the high end. But we're still doing, 20 plus billion in a year in velocity. So it's a unique asset class for sure, a unique niche to be in.
I want to just give a little insight to people, that I think 700 plus new Class A developments came online in 2021. I don't know the numbers for 2022 yet, but you're talking about less than 1,000 new facilities. What I do know about 2022 is actually the average square footage per person dropped by 0.1. It went from 6.2 to 6.1. So the rate of new facilities in self-storage was slower to grow than the population in the last year, which is fun for us as developers, right? Because less supply, more demand,
Yep.
hopefully higher rates down the road. But it's really 700 facilities, right? And the average developer didn't build one. There weren't 700 people that built new facilities. You maybe had 200 or 300 people total building new self-storage facilities in a year. So you talked about that small group. It really is a small. Now there's other people that buy facilities. There's the REITs that manage facilities. So it's not just
Yep.
the guys building, but you're not talking about tens of thousands of people. It's a really small community. What do you think it is about storage that allows it to be so friendly? Why is there not that blood in the water feeling to it? Because it blows my mind. I have some ideas, but I still
Yeah.
wonder how that is.
I would maybe say because it isn't as institutionalized, it's a still highly fragmented industry, right? So the REITs, they own 20, 25%, maybe a little more of the facilities nationwide. And then you've got your kind of regional operators that probably own another 20% or so. Just ballparking. I mean, these numbers have changed pretty dramatically in the last, 2 years, but mom and pop still own the majority of these locations nationwide. So it's not as institutionalized. It's not as cutthroat. It's still kind of a mom and pop business and mom and pop industry, to an extent. And so I think that maybe takes out some of the kind of cutthroat mentality that you mentioned there that we do see in other asset classes. It's more just individuals that own a small business or two. And this is something that they've owned for 40 years now. Their dad gave it to them. Their dad was in storage. They got into it. And it's just, they're nice people from, small towns throughout the US, and they're just friendly people. I mean, this is how they make a living.
I think that's awesome insight. I would expound upon that. Alex Burnham, who we had on the show a few months back, the Storage Mart family.
Yeah.
Just a family from the Midwest, Columbia, Missouri, just a small operation. They only own $8 billion worth of self-storage facilities. But man, the nicest guy. And I met Alex actually at that very first show I went to in Orlando in 2022. I can call that guy at any time and ask him a question and he'll instantly give me an answer. Which I'm blown away by that. Maybe it's because people are so successful. Like it cash flows so well. It's such a great asset to own that people don't feel that fear. They don't feel that scarcity mindset that leads to that, blood in the water type deal. But I'll tell you what, I'm thankful every single day for being in an asset class. I'm 50 years old, as I said. I'm on my fourth or fifth different career. I've been in a whole bunch of different industries, never seen anything. I've seen people be friendly, but more friendly like at the trade show. Not friendly when the trade show's over and you call them and you need some information, right? Self-storage really above and beyond in that level where I've got so many guys I can call them up and ask them for, like you talked about, kind of picking someone's brain about a market. I can call Alex and say, hey, would you go into this market? And he's going to tell me for real. He's not going to lie to me. He's going to say, hey, we love that market. We'd absolutely build there. I find, in case you can't tell, I absolutely am endeared to self-storage because of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me a little bit. I'm going to kind of ask you to put on, we only got a couple minutes left here. So we're getting close to wrap. Promised you 45 minutes would go by really fast, and we're 40 minutes in and it has gone by very, very quickly. I want you to put your crystal ball on a little bit. It's coming up on the fourth quarter of 2023. Obviously been a little bit of a challenging year from a rates and debt scenario. What do you see happening in the let's say the next 3 quarters through the middle of 2024, and then maybe for the next 3 years, what do you guys foresee happening in the market?
Honestly, in self-storage specifically, I think we'll see more of the same. I mean, transaction velocity is about half of what it was in the first half of 2022 and back half of 2021. I think that velocity kind of stays where it has been over the past 6 to 9 months. I don't see it improving very much. I think a lot of sellers are holding out to ultimately get back to pricing similar to 2021. And, at least are going to test the waters for the next 2-3 years and hope that we do get there. So I think, we'll see more of the same. But personally, I think we'll see rate cuts towards the end of next year, hopefully. And then I think 2025, 2026 will pick back up. I mean, I think that we'll still have big years, of course. I mean, this business is cyclical. So, it will come back. It's just a matter of how long will it take to get there. Hopefully inflation will come down to the Fed's target here soon, and they'll feel like they can start cutting rates. Now, I don't see rates going back to where they were during COVID, but just a bit of a cut, I think will spur quite a bit of investment. So I'm thinking 2025, 2026 will be good years.
I think that's such an interesting insight, because I think we're, obviously I lived through 2008 as a business owner, and very, very different time. I don't think right now we're dealing quite as much with a lack of access to money. People aren't as strung out and debt ridden from a business owner perspective. I think a lot of the transactional decline that you've seen is much more about managing risk than it is about not having access to money. That's my take on it. People are not overextended the way they were in 2008, where all of a sudden their house is 30% upside down. That being said, that little bit of reverse, right? A lot of the last year has been, where's it going to end? Where's the Fed going to stop raising? When are we going to, if you can't target what your interest rate's going to look like, 8 months later, how do you do a project? So I couldn't be more on board with your assessment on that piece of it. A little cut is going to go a long ways to loosening some of that, trepidation, I guess, the word I would use. Why don't you give me some numbers? You talked about the velocity coming down. Take me back to like late 2021, 2022. How many properties were you bringing to market in a month? How many offers were you getting on average on them? And maybe then relate that to what's happening now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just annually. So in 2021, I sold like 55 facilities. And last year, just under that, 48 facilities. This year, we've sold about 20. And we'll probably close out another 15-ish before the end of the year. So, I mean, it's a definite drop. And I think the biggest factor there is with the number of offers that we're getting. I mean, I've seen it probably cut in half, if not more, depending on the deal. And it changes the game. I mean, because before you're hosting call for offers, getting 15, 20 offers in, best in finals, 5-7 groups. And that's where you really bid up the price, right? Now, you might get half that. And part of the reason is everyone's just being a lot more selective with ultimately what they're buying and what they're writing offers on, and really honing in on, their niche and kind of what their focus is and what they're ultimately submitting offers on. So it's had an impact for sure, just on overall velocity. There's less buyers in the marketplace now than there was in 2021, arguably, at least on some of the bigger groups. There's been some larger groups that have pulled out of the marketplace. And for now, I mean, not selling, but just not really buying, not looking at new opportunities. And so it depresses pricing a little bit when there aren't as many buyers at the table. There isn't as much competition. Less offers is going to equal a lower price.
Absolutely. Listen, man, I'm going to go back. It's 7:45. We're at 44 minutes and 30 seconds. I promised a hard stop at 45 minutes. So appreciate you, man. I learned so much in the last 45 minutes. Can't wait to say hi in person in Vegas. We'll have to do this again sometime. I hope you'd be willing to come back on and join us, because it was amazing, and the 45 minutes flew by. Appreciate you. Look forward to continuing to watch your growth and see what you accomplish. I'm hoping I can ride the coattails a little bit and do some business with you here as we go down the road.
Absolutely. No, we'll work together soon. Dad, Steve, thank you guys for the time and the opportunity.
Love it, guys.